Blog Talk Radio.
Rockers in Recovery Media is dedicated to carrying the message of addiction recovery through music, news, events, and festivals taking place within and not limited to the clean and sober community.
Hey, good morning. John Hollis with Waking Up Blessed. I want to thank everybody for tuning in this morning. We have a great guest in store for you. Lyle from the Shores is on with us. We're going to be talking about Waking Up Blessed. Most importantly, we're going to hear his story of hope, because you know something, it's about starting out the day with encouragement and experience strength and hope, and how we get through our day without picking up a drink or a drug. And Lyle's a huge example of not only doing that, but being able to help people along the way to find treatment or get help. Or, you know, this is a man that has dedicated his life to service, and not just to the recovery community, but internationally. He does a lot of different things for different communities. The Haiti projects that he works on is amazing. He's just a great guy. I want to get him on, and we're going to talk, of course, about that in detail. And I want to thank SoberMap app for sponsoring today's show. You can check out SoberMap by going to the App Store or by going to Google Play Store. You can download the SoberMap app and find local AA meetings or NA meetings or 12-step meetings anywhere in your area. There's also some other information there that can help you to get connected with other people in recovery. SoberMap app, check it out. So today's show, also, if you check it out and you're at Blog Talk Radio and you're at the page, there's recovery media partners there. And you can call those folks. They can help with any type of circumstances that deals with, of course, addiction and mental health combined. So you can check those folks out. Give them a call. Lyle is one of those phone numbers there. You can give him a shout. Also, at 888-249-2590. Lyle, welcome to the show. Thanks for being a part of Waking Up Blessed and Rockers in Recovery.
Oh, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
You know, we've had you on, I don't know, many times, and you've been a part of Rockers in Recovery for many years. And one of the things that I would like to do this morning is hear your story, because, you know, I think that right now and what we're going through as far as the epidemic and all of the other things, people always hear, that, there's places to go and there's solutions, and, we can talk about the ins and outs of addiction and the addicted mind and all of that, but, sometimes our story really helps somebody else get motivated. So, let's start with where it all began for you.
Oh, that's kind of hard to pinpoint where it began, but, I grew up in Miami-Dade County, and in an environment that was interesting, to say the least. I had typically, we talk all the time about functional, dysfunctional families, and I personally have never actually met a family that wasn't dysfunctional at some level, but like many, mine was. There was violence, there was animosity, there was all that fun stuff, and so I became financially independent, started paying rent at 13, and in some ways maybe grew up a little too fast in that regard. And that led me into environments, moving into my own place, finishing high school while living away from home and around other folks we were young. It is the 70s and doing all the things that the 70s in Miami would imply. Getting exposed to the quote-unquote party scene, which meant at that time, that was when Quaaludes were big, LSD was pretty huge, marijuana was obviously rampant, and Miami cocaine was as well. And that was just normal behavior, at least in the crowd that I was around. And so I did that, and I actually was very functional for many years, went off to college, continued to do that, and still wrapped in that world. A few things that happened along the way to sort of shape my story. One was that at 11 years old, I found a faith. I came from a fairly agnostic, mixed background, Jewish family roots, and no real exposure to faith of any kind, but something grabbed a hold of me and had me going to churches. Unfortunately, the churches I went to in that area were not very welcoming or accepting. I was a long-haired, in the words of one place, they didn't want me there because I was a long-haired hippie freak Jew, to quote the guy who asked me to leave his church. So my early exposure to religion was not necessarily positive, yet I knew folks. I had friends that had this faith that I was drawn to. So 3 more attempts to join a church, obviously picking very poor locations because each one of them asked me to leave. I wasn't welcome there. Probably the way I was dressed, the way I looked, and my Jewish background may have all played part in that. And so so the last church that I went to was up in North Carolina, and I think I was still 11, maybe 12 years old at that time. I stole a Bible from that church, and I read it cover to cover twice that summer. And what I got out of it, with my unchurched background, was that these people in churches didn't know the God of the Bible because he would have accepted me. I became sort of a Lone Ranger Christian. I believed what I was reading, but so I formed my values on some of that, and it was that nowhere in the Bible did I see it say not to use drugs. It told me not to drink, do not be drunk with wine, but be filled with the Holy Spirit. So, I limited my intake of alcohol, but everything else was game. So from there, a few other things that shaped me. One was as a teenager, living on my own and out there in the world, and probably not in the safest environments of Miami. And actually in Broward County, I got abducted by a guy who was a homicidal necrophiliac. He liked to have sex with dead people. So he kidnapped me and handcuffed me, beat and tortured me for quite some time. And it was to his plan, and he was very explicit with me, it was to kill me and then rape me. Went through all that, survived, was put on, sent to the hospital, came out on pain meds, and oddly enough, the pain meds did not take me out. Mostly because in the environment that I was in, I had to be on unawares all the time. I had to be, I was in an environment where you had to have your head on a swivel, ready to fight. So I preferred things that kept me, lucid and coherent, or at least active. And so the cocaine was much more of a draw to me than the opioids, because they slowed me down. The neat thing about that environment was I was an angry young man at that point. Violently angry. I wanted to hurt people who hurt people. Anybody who took advantage of the younger, smaller guy, or guys who hit girls, or people who abused children, I felt it was my role in the world to go, pummel these people. Not a very healthy approach. Thankfully, while I was out in the middle of the Everglades being left for dead, God spoke to me, and I forgave right then and there the man who had abducted me. It definitely an act of God, because it was not in my spirit or my soul. It was something that God gave me. And that forgiveness freed me from a lot of anger and resentments that I was holding on to toward other people in my life. From there, though, unfortunately, I still continued down that road of the quote-unquote party scene. And after a few decades of, successful business and appearing healthy on the outside, my insides were rotten. Just the drug use had caught up to me, and I was not living a good life, and lost my home, and was wandering around, living in my car. Someone stole my car, so now I'm homeless. I went from having a nice little ranchette in Miami with a swimming pool with a waterfall and a slide to living in my car, which was then stolen. And things were obviously not going real well. I still had a job. I still was making money, but it just wasn't working real well for me. So someone mentioned to me a place that I could go and get treatment. I never knew that there was such a place, and it was a very expensive place. And this is in the 90s. And, tens of thousands of dollars for a 4-week stay. And it was a relief. It was like a lot of pressure had been lifted. Living that life the way I was miserable. I looked very good on the outside, even when I was homeless. I had what other people thought they wanted. I had a good job. I had money flowing. I had things that looked good, but was just miserable. So I get to this place, and I wouldn't recommend it. They took a lot of money. They put me in detox. There was no medical necessity for my detox, but they could bill for it. They had a guy come by and ask me, "How you doing?" I'd say, "Okay," and he'd bill me for a psychiatric visit. They put me in a log cabin, which was beautiful, again, very restful. About 3 weeks in, they tell me, you're a pretty severe case, and we think you need more like 3 months than 1 month. And I said, "Oh, okay," and they said, "Well, we need another check." I'm like, you do realize I'm an addict. How liquid do you think I am? I didn't have any more money to give them. And they said, "Well, let's see what we can do." And magically, at 32 days, I graduated. I suddenly didn't need all that help when I didn't have the money anymore. And they sent me off to a 3/4 way house where everybody was high. And my roommate was banging heroin. The girl across the hall, as I was moving in, was being carted away for a ketamine overdose. And it was just a horrible environment. But I managed to stay clean about 3 months in there. I did all the things they suggested. I did. Actually, they said, 90 and 90. I said, I can beat that. I didn't have to go to work, so I did 3 meetings a day, and I could do 90 and 30. I was chairing a meeting 2 weeks out of treatment. But then the urges, the cravings were just overpowering. And I called my sponsor and said, "Listen, that burning desire they talk about, I got it going on here. I need to talk with you." And he says, "Well, listen, I got some other meetings, and then I got a lunch date, and we'll get together after that." Well, that was all the permission I needed. I was off to the races and back out. You can't meet with me. You don't have time to deal with my burning desire. I'm going to go use. And I did, and that made things get even worse, as it always does. And then one day, as I'm standing in the middle of one of the worst neighborhoods of Miami with a handful of drugs that I had just demanded from somebody and wrangled from the local dealer, it just hit me. I'd been talking to God that this isn't how I want to live. This isn't the legacy I want to leave. And I'm going to need help. And I kept telling him soon because I still had money. And I really wasn't ready. I could not find it within myself to quit using while I still had the ability to use. So it just hit me there. And it was late at night, and I just dropped to my knees in this park, what used to be known as the shooting gallery, and just said, "Okay, Lord, I'm done. We've been talking about it, and I can't do this anymore." And I walked across the street, and there was a girl who worked in the corner there, and I gave her all the drugs. And she said, "What do I have to do for this?" I said, "Walk away quickly." And I wandered around for a good 24 hours, just walking around. And then I went to this house that I used to use at, and there was a paraplegic guy who lived there, barely spoke English. And I walked up to his apartment where I was going to just crash on his couch while I figured out what was next. And the phone rings, and it's a law enforcement officer that knew a family friend. How they found me is still a little beyond me. I didn't even know the phone number there. And they said, "We found a place for you to go, and it's free. You don't have to worry about the money." I said, "Well, that's a pretty good deal." But immediately my addiction kicks in and says, "Well, but there's this guy that owes me a couple grand. So let me go collect that first." And the cop said, "No, I'm downstairs. Come out now." So I did. And I went to my aunt's house, and they had a little cot set up in a den living room type area, and I was supposed to call this place and get in the next day. Unfortunately, that didn't work that way, and I had to call every day for a couple of weeks, basically begging for a spot to get in. Finally, one opens up, and I get there, and it's what they call the Phoenix model, and it's a therapeutic community where you have to be interviewed by the other clients to get in. And it was fairly abusive, quite frankly. It was at the time. They've since changed the program. It's much better, but at the time it was not healthy. But you could stay as long as you wanted. You could stay 9 months, and that was what I needed. Even though when I went there, I thought it was a 30-day program, which is why I agreed to go. And I get there, and they go 9 months, and I said, well, to myself, I'm thinking I'll stay, a few weeks and then, head out. But as the clarity came and the Lord began to work in my life, I saw that I did need more. a matter of fact, at the end of the 9 months, I asked if I could stay on as a volunteer because I still felt that I couldn't trust me. I wasn't ready. And I did. I stayed on, and I helped them do fundraising, helped them actually up their game. We ended up hiring a psychiatrist and licensed professionals, which they hadn't really had before. I stayed on there for a couple of years, actually. Close to 3 years I spent in that location, and it was a homeless shelter for men with addictions. It was a faith-based center, so they had that going. And again, the only thing they had was to break you down to build you back up. And they had one guy in particular known as Mr. Ron who was like the devil incarnate. He would just constantly run people off and berate people and just treat people so poorly that they would leave. And that was his sort of barometer or test that if you could stick that out, that maybe you had a chance. Not healthy, but in my case, it actually worked. So from there, I began to really pursue my relationship with God because to me that was the factor that got me through all of that. And so I went to seminary to something called the Charles Stanley Institute, which doesn't exist anymore. Studied the scriptures, began to learn more about that, and then started working in nonprofits and doing fundraising and grant writing. I had a place called We Care that did a lot of different types of community activism, and began to study psychology and trying to get prepared to become a certified addiction professional. In that process, we ended up moving up to the Port St. Lucie area because my in-laws both had cancer and we wanted to be close by. And I had been working with my wife and two other couples that we developed a church for the homeless, the addicted, the sexually abused, and the mentally ill. And I really thought that ministry was going to be the direction that my life was going to go. But when I got to Port St. Lucie, I just could not find a place to plug in with that. A place that understood that demographic and was what I thought was a healthy environment. There was a couple ministries nearby that either didn't have use for my services or I thought were not about the right things. And I ended up working all kinds of odd jobs, worked at Palm Beach Habilitation with people with developmental disabilities, worked in pest control, worked in printing, worked in you name it. I had a variety of jobs while I waited for the Lord to sort things out, went back to school, got another degree in psychology, and then God led me to a faith-based ministry that was geared toward addiction. In the meanwhile, I was doing consulting work with other treatment centers because I had become pretty well versed in state statutes, licensure, and accreditation processes and outcome measures. So through all that, God continued to work in my life and allow me to make a living and move me into treatment and combined my treatment and my certifications in addictions with my ministry background. And then that kind of fell apart when the director of that place, the founder, relapsed and things kind of went really south there. And I had to report that to DCF and a variety of other agencies. And he didn't take too kindly to being reported to the authorities by me. So he gave me 2 weeks to find somewhere else. And I went back into working in treatment, which I had done. I'd worked with some folks down in the Miami area, both in the homeless sector as well as the high-end sector. And I had become vice president of a 6-county homeless consortium in the middle of the state and continued to be involved in that and homeless projects. Then I went working in for a private facility, high-end facility in Palm Beach County, and just wasn't comfortable with their focus. I was brought in to be their certified Christian counselor, but I wasn't actually able to talk about the things that were related to Christian counseling. And they seemed to be more focused on income rather than outcomes. And I became frustrated with this approach because I felt like we weren't really helping people. We were just billing. And I had been somewhat vocal about my frustrations with some other folks who agreed and thought that there might be an opportunity to do something different, more along the model that I had in mind, which was focusing on a small, intimate environment that provided better outcomes for folks. And that's how the Shores was born. And so in 2013, I switched gears and began that development. God has continued to pull me along and help me to find ways to do his work, both in the treatment field and out. And as you mentioned earlier, we've been working since 2000, let's say 2009, working with projects in Haiti, orphans and widows, and water sanitation projects and microloans to the widows there to help them be self-sustaining. Medical projects, we've done that in Ecuador as well. In fact, end of July, I head to Guatemala, where the volcano just erupted, and we're going to do some work down there. So God has led me to many paths to share his love and his light and hope to others, and just ways to give back. And I've found that the best drug for me now is both my relationship with God and the work that he allows me to do in other people's lives. Giving is much better than getting. I used to have a career where I made a lot of money, and it almost killed me. And I'm not against money. Trust me, I'd like to have a little more. But it can't be my primary focus, or I'll lose focus of who God meant me to be. So through the physical abuses that I suffered early in life, through the verbal and emotional abuses that I incurred, as well as the little, abduction and attempts on my life. And that wasn't the only attempt on my life. There was another time where I was in the environment that I was in. I was jumped by 15 skinheads armed that tried to kill me. Actually pulled a .357 to my temple, pulled the trigger, and grace of God, the gun jammed. So survived that. Came out, with some injuries because they beat the snot out of me, but I survived it. And through it all, the one thread that God has always shown me is it really everything works to his good. And Romans 8:28, all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord, live according to his purposes. So even that, even being abducted and tortured, raped, and left for dead has taught me forgiveness. It's taught me a lot of valuable lessons, and it's led to a lot of great things. And I tell people all the time, I wouldn't necessarily want to do it again, but I wouldn't undo it either. The lessons I've learned, the people I've met, and the changes it's created in my heart and soul are worth the pain and suffering that you go through to get there. And I believe that in God's economy, that's how we grow. In James, it says that, count it as pure joy when you face various trials and tribulations, because through them, you develop perseverance. And through that perseverance, you develop in character. So if we're going to grow as humans, we have to experience these things, these trials in life, and overcome them. Know that with God's help, we can get through it, and that we will actually become better people on the other side of it, and be able to handle the next hurdle even better. So I truly believe that, and I believe that I would not be where I am today. I would be in a worse spot were it not for the trials I've endured.
The question, and I'm glad that, what a powerful message, man. And trauma and all of those things really endure a lot of us and keep us from being the people that we are. You know what I mean? And being the people that God wants us to be. One of the things that I love about your story and always have is the fact that people get recovery in all types of different ways. Some people go to 12-step organizations and they get clean and sober. Some people go to Christianity. Some people go to Buddhism. And you're a pure example of somebody that really, can share your experience that your way also is working too. And I think that, we need to have a variety of things out there for people to, get in where they fit in. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. One of the things that we've developed at the Shores, we do have a faith-based track and the ability to reach people from a faith-based perspective. But I also understand, having grown up not in that environment and having to find my own path, that others do as well. I don't believe that is the recovery path for everybody. Would I recommend it because it worked for me? Absolutely. Do I think that everybody goes that route to get clean? Absolutely not. So I can tell you that everybody needs a different approach, and if it's not individualized to that person's where they are at that point in life, then you're not going to be successful. One of the things we've learned, and you mentioned the trauma, is everybody experiences trauma different. with all the research now on ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, and how it affects the development of your mind and your moods and behaviors and even your predispositions, is phenomenal. If we don't look at those factors, then we're missing a large part of the picture, and it's different for everybody. We do genetic testing for the genetic addiction risk score so that we can tell people which neurotransmitter activities are functioning well or not based on their DNA. But when I read the reports to people, I explain to them, you may have a predisposition toward X, Y, and Z. However, a predisposition does not mean you'll exhibit it. That's epigenetics. That's the environment, the culture, the upbringing, and that's different for everybody. So two people with the exact same DNA could have very different life experiences. One, they may both be predisposed to PTSD, for instance, but they may not both suffer from it. They may both be predisposed to alcoholism, but they might not both be alcoholics. So if we don't understand that thread that runs through their life and the scenarios that brought them to our door in the first place, we're not going to be able to properly help them. Yes, based on their DNA, I can help them adjust their brain chemistry, reduce cravings and tendencies, and a wide range of neurotransmitter-based issues, but they've still got life that we need to deal with. They've still got thinking, habits, behaviors that need to be addressed. Does adjusting the brain chemistry through natural means assist in that greatly? Absolutely. But it's not the whole sum of the story. We still need to deal with that individual as an individual. We all get there differently. And what works for me may not work for someone else.
Great message of hope, Lyle. I'm so happy that you're a part of our lives. Me and Lori love you and Darlin very much, and we're just really, happy to see where the Shores has gone and when you opened and where you're at today, and the people that you've helped. And you're all over this country and internationally, and you're spreading a message of hope. And the seeds that you drop. This is something that I've come to find out over the years, is that the seed that I'm dropping today might not necessarily blossom for another 5 years or 10 years or whenever God's ready to have that blossom, but the seed's been planted, and that's what the good thing about what you do and how you do it. So we are so glad that you're on with Rockers in Recovery this morning, and I want to thank you for being a part of the show. And, of course, we want to have you back.
I appreciate it. Give my love to Lori.
Definitely will, and thanks for a great message. We'll look forward to having you back.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye. All right, guys, there you go. Lyle's a great guy. If you get a chance to check out, any of Lyle's information, you can go to his personal page at Lyle Freed at Facebook, and also you can check out the Shores at the Shores on Facebook. Great information there. They post stuff every day. So we're going to play a song today going to the close of the show. It's Like Yesterday, and it's Doc Holliday. And, of course, Doc is a great guy. You can check him out at Facebook, too. Doc Holliday on Facebook at Doc Holliday. Talk to you guys tomorrow. We've got a great show in store for tomorrow, too.
Getting off this merry-go-round, time to learn to swim before I drown, and stop pretending that everything's okay. No more losing heart and giving up hope. I'm tying a knot at the end of this rope. If nothing changes, then nothing's gonna change. I'm gonna take this chance while I still have time and face these fears for once in my life. Yeah, I won't back down. This is going all the way. Let the sunshine in, thaw out my heart. Can't win this race if I don't start today before it slips away like yesterday. Your heart can barely beat like some rusty old machine. It's hard to find the strength to turn it all around. I tried blaming everyone but me, till I lost enough to make me see. You gotta cross that bridge before it crumbles down. I'm gonna take this chance while I still have time and face these fears for once in my life. Yeah, I won't back down. This is going all the way. Let the sunshine in, thaw out my heart. Can't win this race if I don't start today, before it slips away like yesterday. Like yesterday. While I still have time and face these fears for once in my life. Yeah, I won't back down. This is going all the way. Let the sunshine in, thaw out my heart. Can't win this race if I don't start today, before it slips away like yesterday. Like yesterday, like yesterday.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.